We're live? Okay. Will you test Jesse's mic real quick? Number 3.
Hello, hello.
You're good.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. We will begin our City Council meeting here for August the 23rd. And before we begin, we would like to have a motion to bring in Vice Mayor Huntington on Zoom. Do we have a motion to do so?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Naomi, if you can unmute and tell us the reason that you are coming in via Zoom this evening.
Yes, I'm here in Radford. I'm coming in by Zoom because I'm cutting over a cold. I'm still coughing and don't want to get anybody else sick.
Okay, medical reasoning. All right, thank you all very much. We'd like to begin with our Pledge of Allegiance, so we'll ask our veterans to come forward to lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. And we will ask that you all please take a second to join us in a moment of silence. Thank you all very much. Council members, you have the minutes from July the 12th, 2021. Have you all had a chance to review those? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Are there any amendments?
Any
amendments? We have a motion to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Excuse me. We also have the minutes from August the 9th. Were there any changes, or do we have a motion to approve as submitted?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve as submitted. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. This is the time where we will have citizen comments. If anybody has anything that they would like to share regarding public matters, we ask that you come forward to the podium and use the microphone to state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Seeing no one coming forward, we will go on and close the citizen comment portion of the meeting. We do have a report. Ashley Briggs, who is the coordinator of our New River Valley Business Continuity Team, a very important initiative that was brought up during the pandemic, is here this evening. She's going to share with us an update on COVID and what's happening in our community. So Ashley, we will turn the floor over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks. Like you said, my name is Ashley Briggs. I'm the Public Health Director for the Business Continuity Team. We operate out of the New River Valley Regional Commission. I was here, I think 9 months ago maybe at this point to give an update, and so just a little bit of additional information tonight. So I'll go over business continuity. I've kind of added a little bit from last time, an update on what our team's been doing, some metrics specific to Radford for you all, and then a COVID-19 update for Radford from the health department.
Will you come a little closer to the microphone so folks can hear you?
Is that better?
That's perfect. Thank
Okay.
you. And while you're there, if you choose to take off your mask, you may. That's fine.
Oh, this isn't working now. What did I do? Okay. Thank you. And so business continuity, just like I said before, it's getting businesses prepared. Right now, we're really focusing on COVID-19 and how to keep COVID-19 either out of your business or how to recover and respond quickly. One of the things that we've started recently is a workshop series. We're hoping that we're getting over the hump, so we are calling it Making Your Business Resilient Beyond COVID-19. Last week, we had our first 2 workshops that businesses were able to attend. The first one being on cybersecurity. With more people working from home and more businesses going online, cybersecurity has been a great issue and a threat to small businesses, especially who don't have the manpower to recover from a cyber attack. The second thing that we had a little bit of a fun time talking about last week was crisis communication. We had a lot of great businesses join us in that and did a little bit of tabletop exercises to how businesses can respond, not just to COVID-19, but a lot of different crisis communication situations. And so if you're interested, we put those out. We don't have another topic yet. I'm really waiting for the Department of Labor and Industry to come out with their updated COVID standard for that to be the next topic. So what have we been doing? Answering lots of questions. It feels like the needle is constantly moving with COVID-19. Today, for instance, I'm gonna actually take this off. The FDA finally approved the Pfizer vaccine, so it is now fully FDA approved for use in ages 12 and up, which is very exciting. We've been reviewing and developing business continuity plans with businesses. We've been working with the health department to hold vaccination events, moving away from that large-scale clinic site kind of feel to more small community events and festivals, as well as working with our local businesses to come right into the business and offer vaccination to their employees. We've been supporting schools through our public health school liaison. We're actually be going out to some schools tomorrow to do some N95 fit testing with some of our special education teachers. Like I said, fit testing. We're doing an on-site testing coordination for businesses, contact tracing, and now a new thing that I've been doing recently is going into businesses and having education sessions specifically about COVID-19 and vaccination hesitancy. If any business is listening and wants me to come out, I'm more than happy to come out to talk to any size business. So some metrics, right? Going through the actual year, not the physical year now, looking at the metrics specifically for the Radford business sector, it's a little bit of everything. With our biggest one being the healthcare and social assistance, that does include our child care facilities, as well as our physicians' offices, both big and small. Now, all of those businesses represent over 2,000 jobs, which I think is super impactful, especially for a community of Radford. Those are people we've directly impacted by talking to their business owner, by keeping their business open, by making sure we had strong communication with them. Just recently, I talked to a business where all 5 of their employees tested positive, and helping them recover from that kept them open in a safe capacity for their clients. And so what types of services have we've been offering this year to our Radford businesses? Everything. Business continuity, contact tracing, answering questions, doing on-site vaccination clinics, handing out free mask signs and posters for their business, and then doing that vaccine coordination with the businesses maybe to get one individual vaccinated here or there, not necessarily on-site. So a little bit about the data. This comes from the weekly update that the task force puts out. Radford is currently at 40.1% of the population being fully vaccinated, which is not good, but it's getting there, right? The more people that we get vaccinated, the better. We're really trying to get to that 70 or 80%, especially with the Delta variant.
Can you go back one slide? We are the lowest of all of our New River Valley communities, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Percentage-wise, more vaccines given than Floyd County and Giles, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I will say that it could be potentially a little skewed for Radford just because if a student wrote down an address outside of Radford, from a census perspective, they are counted, but from a vaccination standpoint, they wouldn't be.
Right.
Okay.
And I was hoping to have vaccination numbers from Radford, but they're not quite all together yet. So I will get that to you once they have it. Looking at our epi curve, this is what I think is the proof in the pudding when it comes to vaccines. That blip at the end is our Delta wave coming in. It is significantly dropping off for the New River Valley. And I didn't get to put them in the slides, but I just saw the one for today that includes through last week. And it's continuing to drop off precipitously, which is really exciting. And then this is Radford. So we did see a blip in Radford, but the peak was only 23 cases that week.
Well, but is that actually accurate, or does that include the changeover from Montgomery County to Radford?
Correct. So this does not include the changeover.
Okay.
This is based on symptom onset and
Okay.
not the funny math that VDH does when they correct for zip code
Okay.
and census tract, and then they move them just into whatever day they do it instead of looking at when the case actually occurred. This is the data that our local health department puts out every week that's much more accurate.
Good.
And so that was my little update, and I'll take any questions.
Right now, I know everything you do is pretty much business specific, but if you had general advice for our businesses and organizations out there in dealing with the Delta wave and everything related to COVID, what general advice would you have for safety?
continue to be vigilant. If you are feeling ill or off or just not quite right, it's better to test than to not to test. I know that tests are becoming a little bit harder to get, but if you give me a call, I will find you a test. Getting people tested who are symptomatic is number one. I know that some of our pharmacies are having a hard time offering them, but the ones that do are supposed to offer symptomatic testing free because those tests have been paid for by the federal government. So calling the health department or calling me or calling a local pharmacy, you should be able to find a test, but if you don't, like I said, call the business continuity team, I will find you a test.
Does it make sense for our businesses to still keep partitions and things like that in place to try to provide some level of distancing?
With Delta, we know that it's more of an airborne transmission, just because the number of particles required to be infected is a lot lower than with the original strain of COVID. So anything additional that you can keep in place is going to be helpful. Masks are unfortunately here to stay for a little while longer, I think. The good news is because Delta is so contagious, we're 1 or 2, maybe 3 weeks tops away from it burning through our community. And unfortunately, that burn is happening mostly in our unvaccinated folks who are ending up hospitalized. But I think if businesses can hang in there and keep things in place and not try to go all the way back to before times anytime soon, they should be okay.
What other questions do we have, Jesse?
No, my question was just, seeing that there's a dip in our vaccination rates at 40%. I was just wondering, are we just seeing that this one just burns out quickly? It's not as strong as the original COVID-19, or?
So the original COVID-19 was not as infectious, which basically think about chickenpox versus the flu, right? The flu goes through a community and you kind of see cases all winter long. With chickenpox, you saw one kid in the class had it, and by the next week, every kid who had never had chickenpox now has chickenpox, right? And then you don't see chickenpox for a while again until you get a new crop of kids in the class or in the daycare that have never had chickenpox. The same thing is happening with Delta. It's so contagious that as soon as it's here, it's going to rip through and find everybody that can. It's not if you'll be exposed to the Delta variant, it's when at this point. And so unfortunately, we are seeing more breakthrough cases because of that, but the good news is that if you've been vaccinated, your chances of being hospitalized or dying are significantly less. And so by the end of September, as we get into booster shot season, now that they're talking about that at the CDC, I think that we won't have a big wave past the next 2 weeks.
I know we're watching some other countries that seem to be a little bit before us.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any trends that we're seeing there that gives us some hope or that is worrisome?
No, our epi curves are very close and matching what we saw in places like the UK, where their vaccination rate was actually less when Delta hit them. So we're looking a little bit better in terms of number of cases, but it's looking exactly the same in terms of length that Delta took to burn through the country.
Okay, thank you.
Onassis?
Yeah, so you referenced unvaccinated versus vaccinated hospitalizations. Are they tracking individuals who have been vaccinated and who are hospitalized? And what's the weighting? Unvaccinated hospitalized, vaccinated hospitalized, what's the weighting?
So right now, 98% of our hospital admissions are unvaccinated. We do see some breakthrough vaccinated folks being hospitalized, but unfortunately, there are people who are significantly immunocompromised or elderly who have immunocompromising conditions just because of their age, which is why that first group is being recommended that they have that third dose of the shot.
Anything else?
No.
Forrest, do you have any questions?
Nope.
I wanted to read just one quick thing, and it was in line. This struck me this afternoon, and is with what you were just talking about. Between January 17th and August 14th, 2021, 252,938 people developed COVID-19 symptoms or tested positive. Almost all of these were among unvaccinated people. Only about 10,712 infections have been reported during the same time among the 4.7 million Virginians who've been fully vaccinated. I think that's part of the concern, and you're right, there's all kinds of questions with the numbers. I actually went through a couple weeks ago and broke down the numbers. It looks like for Radford, our actual college-age population is pretty strong, and our over 65 population is strong, but 25 to 65 is 35 to 38%. And that's concerning because that's a group that is around a lot of folks, and even though folks are generally healthy, it's not the same as some of the older population that might have other issues. That's concerning because that's that group that can get it, and that's several thousand people in the city of Radford. So one piece you mentioned, I don't want to gloss over this too quickly, the Pfizer vaccine did receive full FDA approval, no qualifications, nothing along that line, that it is fully approved, because I know some people were very concerned about the vaccines only being emergency approved. And do you have any thoughts on that at this point?
I do, and so I think the other thing too is people are concerned at how fast it was approved. Vaccines and drugs are both approved by the FDA. They go through very different processes because you get a vaccine, it runs through your system in about 24 to 48 hours, and then you have immunity. They don't need to track you out as long as a drug that you're taking daily or monthly or, some other time frame. That's why drugs take so long to get approved. Vaccines are much shorter approval process. This was faster, but not for any safety, cutting corners. Normal amount of people were tested, the normal amount of time was followed. What took so long or short, depending on how you look at it, these last few months, was that when a vaccine is fully approved by the FDA or a drug, the FDA has to put out protocols and procedures on how to store, ship, and essentially keep the product at optimal condition. Those are things that pharmacies and the health department and some hospitals are used to, but your everyday provider in a small doctor's office probably isn't. And so they want to make sure that those things are tested over and over and over again and that the directions are locked tight before they put them out. So a lot of what's been happening in the last few months is that the FDA has put everybody they can think of on this writing and getting it perfect as quickly as possible to get it out the door. So, well, I think they could have written it in a week. I'm not for the FDA, so they were essentially going over the details of distribution and putting it on the shelf. How long can you keep the Pfizer vaccine in the freezer versus the refrigerator versus open on the counter versus in the syringe? That's what they've been working on the last 4 months, not is it safe, what are the side effects? Those are things that have already been studied and already been checked off. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gotten emergency use authorization.
Have we seen any real negative consequences due to the vaccine here in the New River Valley that you're aware of? People receiving the vaccine and then having extreme health conditions?
No, we have not. We haven't seen anything. We haven't had a single person have an anaphylactic reaction, at least at any of the clinics that I've been at, none that I've heard of. Everything's gone fairly smoothly.
Wonderful. Naomi, do you have any questions?
I do have a question about booster shots. As there is talk of boosters coming to Virginia, businesses who coordinated with you to get their employees vaccinated, will they go through the same process to get their booster shots when it is the appropriate time?
So they're more than welcome to. I'm sure that I'll have the most up-to-date information, and I actually have an inbox full after the announcement today of businesses reaching out who are very excited. I will say that based on the 8th-month time frame that they're suggesting, we didn't start vaccinating till January 4th. So businesses aren't quite going to be ready to be getting their booster till October, but we will have a plan out soon, hopefully. We're kind of coordinating and deciding what the best route to go is, whether it's to continue to do small clinics. Flu season is also coming up, so the health department does have a flu shot campaign. So we're just trying to figure out what the best way forward is, but I'll have all the information if businesses want to reach out to me directly.
Naomi, do you
Thank
have
you very
anything
much.
else?
No, that's all for me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Right now, if we were to give some advice to our businesses, it is that remain vigilant, that we are not quite through this yet. Masks, social and physical distancing, and vaccinations are the best tools we have, right?
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts, questions, council? Ashley, thank you so much. I have to say, I've been fortunate to serve as our representative on the Regional Commission, and this BCT and having you on board was one of the most important things we did this last year, because literally you have saved jobs and potentially saved lives through your actions. So I appreciate your efforts. Thanks for coming to speak with us tonight, and please let us know what else we can do as a council and as a city to keep folks safe.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. David, do you want to share some of the things that we're doing internally with the city to keep our employees safe and some of the things we're working on?
I have haven't gotten everything out to staff at this point, but we
Okay.
are looking at as many things as possible to keep our staff safe, as well as those interactions. I think everybody knows, particularly focused on the rec department and the library, because we've got so many students that are going there after school, coming down from high school, or going in from the elementary schools. So we want to make sure that we are protecting them as much as we're protecting each other. So we've gone to masking in those locations just through the next few weeks, as long as the variant is out there. And then we're also pushing out as much as we can with our departments and our employees about vaccination, the positiveness of any kind of medical information we've got, things like that. Just flooding things with information. Common sense things, if you're with somebody unvaccinated, wear a mask, or you're in a vehicle or in a common area, those kinds of things. So trying to look at as many positive things as we can, working with staff and looking at the vaccination program.
All right, for those that couldn't hear, David didn't have the mic on, but that's okay. We're looking at a couple of things, particularly with our recreation department, recreation center, and the library, just to make sure we keep folks safe there. The good thing is we still have our petitions up, so that's a positive, and we can still, I believe, do contact tracing if we have to, definitely from the rec center. I don't know if we're able to do that from the library at this point, but that would be something we'd have to think about. But
We have kept all the safety measures in place at all the locations, still encouraging everybody to do online, any kind of services you can do with us online is for the best.
And really the message, as you're hearing tonight, is while we would prefer to be beyond all of this, we're not quite yet. And we are moving in a good place. Radford, if you can, please encourage folks to get the vaccine. I understand there's all kinds of reasons folks have for choosing not to. There are a lot of really, really good reasons to choose that. And one of the most important reasons is our kids under the age of 12 can't get the vaccine at this point in time unless they are have a special medical condition that allows that. And even then, I think it's rare. That's an important piece, not so much in this community, but in other communities around the nation. There have been pediatric hospitals that have been full of kids struggling with COVID, and we want to avoid that if we can. I know we're working on that with our schools, the library, the rec department, but really the most effective tool we have is those of us that can get the vaccine to get it, and then limit how that can be spread to a degree. Any other thoughts? Okay, that wraps it for COVID right now. We do want to talk a little bit about Radford Transit's 10th anniversary. Right before we held this meeting tonight, we celebrated a little bit. We celebrated a little bit on Saturday as the transit team got together for their annual safety meeting. And this is the 10th anniversary of Radford Transit. So I will read the proclamation again, and then we can take a motion to put this into effect. This is a City of Radford proclamation in celebration of the 10th anniversary of Radford Transit. Whereas in 2009, a feasibility study was performed that demonstrated the need and economic viability for a public bus system, and whereas, as a result of the feasibility study, a joint partnership between Radford University, Radford City, Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and the Federal Transit Administration formed, and whereas on August 8, 2011, Radford Transit was established from Tartan Transit, serving both the student population and the public. And whereas Radford Transit service began with 5 routes and 100 stops with only 6 small 12-passenger buses, Radford Transit has grown into 14 routes with 245 stops, providing well in excess of 2,807,750 trips, running 20 medium and large buses. And whereas Radford Transit provides regional connections and stops to Blacksburg Transit, Pulaski Area Transit, and whereas Radford Transit provides safe, reliable, inexpensive, and courteous public transportation service for our customers, and whereas Radford Transit is a vital community asset which continues to partner with other transit leaders to assist the region in satisfying the future mobility needs of its growing population. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of Radford that we celebrate Radford Transit's 10 years of transformative and exceptional service to the public, express our deepest gratitude to the community, members and leaders, past and present drivers, dispatchers, schedulers, mechanics, supervisors, managers, and other staff who have helped Radford Transit become the service it is today, and urge all persons in the area to ride. Adopted August 23rd, 2021, signed by myself. Do we have a motion to accept this proclamation?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second in honor of Radford Transit. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Congratulations. Again, thank you so much to Melissa. I wanted to just read a note here. Morgan Griffith was sincerely sorry that he couldn't make it. Members of Radford City Council, dear Mayor Horton and council members, I am sorry I cannot be with you this evening to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Radford Transit. I was called back to Washington, D.C. for votes on upcoming legislation. I'm pleased to recognize the many benefits that the routes have brought to the city of Radford and the New River Valley community, especially the opening of a new route called the New River Valley Community College Connector, NRCCC. Your services benefit community members and students alike. Sincerely, H. Morgan Griffith, Member of Congress. So, thank you all very much. And Patrice, thank you so much for joining us from Richmond today. We are so appreciative to have you here. And we had several other folks join us for the celebration. This really is important because so many people rely on this for work and supplies and connection and everything under the sun. And we have exciting news coming. We won't get into it so much tonight, but exciting news coming later this fall that we'll share with everybody. Any thoughts from council?
Just want to thank all those who are involved. We had an opportunity to hop on a bus that is from, 2013? Pristine. Whoever keeps that bus needs to come to my house because that was amazing. I was very impressed. No scuffing, you would expect like some marker marks or something on there like, Joni Loves Chachi or something, right? You expect something, but there was nothing there. So kudos to you and your staff and your team for not only running a very efficient ship, but also taking good quality care of our assets. So just want to thank you for that. Great job, Melissa.
Absolutely. Naomi, do you have any thoughts you want to share?
No, thank you. I'm sorry I could not be there this evening to celebrate you all. Congratulations.
And I have to say, having ridden the bus and explored the routes, it is an amazing service. I encourage everyone to do so, to know what that transit system is really all about. And also, for those of us on council, as we're talking about routes and funding and everything else, to recognize how it actually works. It really is an asset to our community, and thank you to Melissa and the whole team who works on this.
Well, I think,
I'd be more than happy to go out with you. I've done so with Naomi, and thank you, Naomi, for allowing me that opportunity. So in the future, you all go on a ride, just let me know. We'll make that happen.
I wanted to say with COVID, we always talk about recognizing our everyday heroes, and I know that those drivers, I think how many, were we talking about how many routes or how many days of routes they had? I figured in the last 10 years, they probably felt like half of those happened last year. I'm sure that it was very fluid, and I just want to take my hat off because they helped still get people to the appointments that were necessary and to get the resources that they needed. So I just take my hat off to them. I know it was a very fluid year, and they did a magnificent job with kind of writing that out, if you will. So
I certainly do appreciate council and David Redpath for allowing us an opportunity to recognize them, and we spent Saturday morning with them, doing so. Certainly, we tell them all the time that there are eyes out there on the road every day. So please, let us know what's going on, how we can do, what we can do to improve the system, and certainly, how much we appreciate them being there for us.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Mayor, just
Yes, sir.
Just one more thing. With Patrice being here, as I say this every time we get to this section of the budget, basically for $123,000 roughly, our partnership with DRPT and with the FTA and Radford University, particularly those two big funding organizations and Radford University, we could not make this program go. So thank you again for all the support. Patrice has been wonderful to help us through the ups and downs. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years, but fantastic program ridership, growing all the time, and I think it's been really, really essential to many of our folks in getting them around the community and get them to points beyond our community. So that's been very important. to us. And thank you to Melissa. She's behind the scenes all the time, and she does a great job with transit, and she knows everything. When the least little thing, I get the smallest complaint, she's got the answer to it immediately. So great job all. And Patrice, thank you again for coming tonight, and thank you for continued assistance and support and funding from DRPT. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Under old business, we do need to consider appointments to our library board and our Commission on Beautification and Municipal Forestry. I will actually begin with the Beautification Commission to start with. Council, you have a letter and a resume from Ashley Sifrit, who has expressed an interest in serving on the Beautification Commission. I would like to speak to her qualification a little bit. She is obviously supremely qualified by her interests, but she's already been very engaged, helping with a number of projects. She even created an online group to encourage others, Radford Helping Hands, to get them to come out with help with projects. And she did attend as a citizen at the last, most recent beautification meeting. She's been actively engaged. The commission is very supportive of her being a part of this, so I'd like to nominate Ashley as a representative to the Beautification Commission. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Nomination and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And for the library board, we have not received any additional nominations unless you all are aware of some. But Ms. Wilder, who normally serves us as clerk, Jenny Wilder has expressed an interest and did check to make sure there wouldn't be a conflict. Now, Mike, would she need to be ex officio as far as voting goes due to her role with the city?
No, in fact, the statute that provides for library boards generally specifically provides that one member of city council or an employee of the locality may serve on the board.
Okay. Well, she has expressed an interest in doing so, so I'd like to nominate Jenny Wilder for the library board. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to new business. Council members, you have received a quote regarding the American Legion building from Crockett Home Improvement, and I'm going to turn this portion of the meeting over to Councilman Burress to talk about a little bit. But just a little history, the American Legion building has been central to this community for many decades and needs some work to be done. There is some concern about water damage coming in through the roof. So Onassis, would you like to share a little more on that?
Thank you. Yeah, so this building is very historic here in Radford, I think circa 1929, so it's served a lot of purposes, temporary library, voting precinct, you name it, this building has done it. And so I think this project, what it does in this first phase, it secures the building to ensure there's no more water penetration into the building. What's happening now is that because the gutter system is failing and the chimney spouts are failing as well, it's causing water to seep down the side of the building, the face of the building, creating a somewhat of a gully towards the side of the building, running out the back, and it's causing some water damage possible in the basement. So what this project will do, it will help us honor this building and what it's done for our community. It will help us to get it secured in terms of skilled labor, because this piece here, we have a lot of great citizens in Radford who have stepped up online and who have volunteered to do some of the labor, but this is really more of a skilled labor. So if this project can be completed, it'll allow the veterans, American Legion veterans to get back in the building, have meetings, and then the next 2 or 3 phases can be unskilled labor. So there's individuals out there in the community who want to volunteer to take on other projects inside the building. They can be done after this project is completed. So.
Council members, you all have the request. It is for, the quote is for $46,295 minus a discount of $500 for a total price of $45,795. What are your thoughts?
Well, as you know, I brought this project to council when I first was elected. It was truly one of my concerns to see this historic building and to see that our veterans were trying to meet in this building where there literally wasn't a bathroom, there wasn't proper heating. Well, literally, there was water running down the walls, and I was very concerned about that as a citizen as well as a veteran. So I think this is a very important project. We've seen the price increase a couple times. I think this time what we're seeing is asbestos, and asbestos removal has been included, so that did increase the price a great deal. And just for the folks at home, because you may not have this, I just want to go over what that $45,795 is covering. Tear off existing asbestos shingles, contain and dispose of debris at asbestos landfill, install ice water shield around perimeter and penetrations, install synthetic felt, install aluminum drip edge, install pipe boots, install step and counter flashing on chimneys and walls as needed, install Owens Corning true definition duration architectural shingles in a 2-year labor warranty. I am not an expert in construction. I did have a roof replaced once, and that it's quite costly. I'm a little torn. I know I have spoke to the council about this before. I'm a little uncomfortable with not getting additional proposals to have the work done. I know that we don't want to add any work to our veterans, but they also pay taxes in the community, so I know that certainly they're also mindful of where we do spend the money. I would still, especially now that the price has increased, I'm twofold. One is we've been talking about this project as long as I've been on council, so I'm very eager to see a resolution to it. I would like to, at the very least, just stop further damage, because the longer we wait on this, the more damage occurs. My other mindset is, as a homeowner, I did get several proposals for the roof because that's fiscally responsible and sound. So I would still like to see a couple more proposals to see what we might get for this project. I don't want to put this project off. I would be even willing, if I know that you're traveling a lot and we've had this conversation, if this is something that I needed to assist and meet folks down at the building, I'd be more than available to do so, and I've done so the first round. So I've been involved in some of those initial meetings on this. So certainly if they needed any additional assistance with getting these, I'd be more than happy to help. So that's where I stand on it. I'm of two minds, but I still feel like I need to be responsible to the taxpayers and just see if this truly is the best that we can get. And it very well may be. I met this gentleman and he was quite pleasant and seemed to be a real advocate for the building as well. It's just a large sum of money to go without having any checks and balances on that.
Naomi, what are your thoughts?
Sure. So first of all, Jesse, I appreciate how long you've been championing this project. As I prepared for the meeting tonight, I went back and I looked at all of the previous conversations that we've had, and this has been going on since 2018. We've been talking about this project. But I have to, and I recognize the importance of preserving this building and moving quickly so that we don't see any additional damage. But I have to say that my concerns with it have grown as the numbers have increased. I do have quite a few concerns. Of course, one is the growing cost. I believe we started sort of talking about, well, what if we gave $5,000, then $12,000, then $20,000, and now we're up to $45,000. So the investment that the city is putting in is ballooning exponentially. I also am concerned because I do want to hear a little bit more about the plans for this building, because to me, it's one thing to support and really champion preserving the building that we know is going to be used in the future for certain things. I struggle investing that amount of money into a building that is just going to be sitting there. So if I could learn more about what it will be used for in the future, that would help me. And then also, Jesse, you mentioned it, you're exactly right. I simply do not think that it is responsible for us to move forward with only one quote. I think we absolutely owe it to the city and to just figure out if this is in fact what is going to be necessary. So I do absolutely think that we need to see additional quotes. And then finally, one of the previous emails that we've seen about this project identified 3 different phases. Of course, we're right now in phase one, which is going to be $45,000, but there are an additional 2 phases for work that is going to be needed to be done that have been previously pointed out to us. Phase 2 is sanding, finishing, staining the main floor. Phase 3 is refinishing the bathrooms upstairs, replacing the bathrooms, and then excavating the front yard to divert water away from the building, doing some landscaping there. And those 2 phases are quoted in this previous correspondence that we've had as over $20,000. And so the additional 2 phases that we're looking for are going to be another substantial investment. And so if we are at a point where the American Legion is unable to fundraise for this initial phase, then I am concerned that we are going to see struggles with funding the other 2 phases as well. And that's going to be an additional investment that we're going to have to make. And so I think it's important for us to look at a realistic look at what all of our costs are going to be. And I just don't think that we have that in front of us right now. So I very much, I want to support this project. I want to do what we can, but I'm not at a point where I'm ready to move forward right now.
Okay, thank you. Forrest, what are your thoughts?
So a few questions just to try to clarify. First on NASA's, can you speak to that last point of Naomi's there with regard to the phase 2 and 3?
I will. At no point has the American Legion presented to the city, or I presented to the city, any funding request for phase 2 or 3. At no point. Okay. So this phase 1 process is, I understand your concern, fiscal responsibility. I understand that our taxpayers deserve to understand where their dollars are being spent. But I also understand there's a loyalty that is deserving to these veterans for what they've done. I'm sure that the American Legion has not kept a tab on all the support that they've given to the community of Radford. They've not kept a tab. So it seems a little disrespectful to veterans to expect a tab for something that they haven't done. They haven't kept a tab on. To her point for plans for the buildings, I need more specificity in terms of, are we asking, are there any money-making plans in terms of what the American Legion is looking to do? Because what they're looking to do right now, and Jesse's been there, David's been there, the existing condition of the building interior does not allow for them to have meetings during winter months, does not allow for them to have meetings during the summer months, which leaves a very small window because it's too hot to meet there during the summertime. It's too cold to meet there during the wintertime.
And they can't have to use the restroom.
Exactly. Yeah, so you got to go at home before you come, right? It's like you do your parents when the parents tell you on the trip, go before you leave. So I get that. And so from a fiscal responsibility, I understand there is a fiscal responsibility component, but there's also an honoring our veterans in this community for what that building has done for our community component as well. You have to weigh both. In terms of plans for the building, plans are pretty basic. They want to open the building up to be able to have some type of money-making revenue component to it, whether it be hosting dances, whether it be in the basement in terms of sectioning out the rooms down there for rent, all those things. They're not asking for that, any funding for the phase 2 and 3. The critical component of this project is phase 1. If phase 1 can be accomplished, our community has opened up amazingly to say, we will come in and do the bathroom project. We will do those kind of things. In terms of materials, Home Depot, great benefactor. They've given us $8,000 in gift cards to purchase materials for this type of project. Phase 2 as well, once we do phase 2, phase 3. So in terms of funding, at no point has American Legion or I asked for funding for phase 2 or 3. In terms of plans for the building, the plans are to continue to have operations there, which they cannot do at this juncture, and to hopefully have the building in a condition that would allow them to make some type of revenue-generating businesses there. And then in terms of fiscal responsibility, I get it, but there's also loyalty to our veterans as well.
So I will say, as a veteran as well, the loyalty is that we're having this conversation and that we're committed to save the building. So a little bit of my take on it, to expound on what Mr. Onassis is also saying, is that so phase 1 is imperative, because if we don't do phase 1, then the conversation ends.
We lose the building.
That's it. And if, and I would even recommend, if other members of the council would like to go look and see kind of for yourself. We really are at the position that we either salvage the building or we simply let it go. It truly is, it's pretty desperate.
I'll tell you, in George Crockett's words, it's now or never. That's it. So we can pontificate, we can articulate, we can continue to ask for more quotes, but we run the risk of losing a treasure in this community that has served this community. And if we want to do that as a council, I can't support that.
So I'm willing, like I said, to assist with, the quotes if that's what's necessary, because I do feel like that is the responsible thing to do. It's the responsible thing to do even for the veterans who are here and that also pay taxes. So I feel like it's just as a council, we have to constantly be vigilant on the bottom line, because what we spend here, we don't spend elsewhere. It limits our ability to assist in other ways. So I feel at this point, since as was just currently mentioned, the price that we've gotten as council has increased a great deal. I think that it is prudent to take these extra few weeks to see what other people will give us in regards to proposals. If they're higher, then we have our answer. If people are too busy and we're finding that they can't come out and do a proposal for 6 months, and that certainly could also guide our hand on this too. The one thing that I think we all agree on is that we want to be of some assistance to salvage the building, because there is a loyalty to the building as well as to the veterans. I can speak a little bit too on some of the things that the veterans had mentioned to me that they would like to see. Now, this is an older generation, so they want to work a little bit closer with entities within the city. They've talked about using the basement as an incubator for starting new businesses. That was one thing that they had a strong interest in. So I think that there is another conversation to be had with them. I think that with this proposal to assist them, I think that we want to make sure that this building continues to be diversely used, and maybe not just for a couple meetings a month. I think that's an important part of the conversation. I also think that just realistically, from walking in there, am I comfortable to say just because these other phases, money hasn't been requested from the city, that it never would be? I don't know about that. I can't say, because we're just at the beginning, and the beginning is truly salvaging it. What I have heard from different people that have come in and different contractors is that with these other phases, we can rely a lot heavier on the use of volunteers. This first phase is just, it's too specific, and it's going to require that professional component. The other phases, there's a little bit more flexibility. I know that we've talked about fundraising for these other portions, and I would hope that we could figure out a way to make this more knowledgeable to members of our community, because I do think people would be willing to contribute. I think we need to just maybe speak with them and see if they do have some plans that they could formulate. But all of that, to be quite honest, until we handle step one, it's just, none of that at this point even matters, because it's in such disrepair due to the water damage. Literally, water runs down the walls, and it's such a beautiful building. Like I said, if you've never been in it, it is quite grand. When they built it, they did put some character into it. So
Some bones.
It's an amazing place, and you walk through it and you can feel the history. And on the wall, there are our fallen veterans listed there. There is, when you walk in the door, there's also a chair that they leave empty for the soldiers that have not returned home. So this is an important place. I feel, again, as a veteran, I'm very loyal to this project. That's why I've been bringing it to council as long as I have. We've moved. We now have council support, which is huge. So I want to thank council in its entirety for taking this on and being willing to even look at these numbers as they've increased a great deal. I still lean on, I just feel like if it was my home, I would get more than one proposal on it. I still feel like we need to do that, and we need to do it quickly. That's the imperative
I speak to
part.
two things. I
If
want
I
to follow up
could.
on Jesse's point. So for Phases 2 and 3, I know you say you don't know whether or not there will be requests for funding in the future. The unskilled labor that can be used to complete phase 2 and 3 has been given in terms of our community support. So if you look at the We Are Radford pages, look at any pages out there on Facebook, there's more people, not only on Facebook, but people have reached out to us directly who will provide that unskilled labor. The materials will be donated by Home Depot. They've already committed to that. So in terms of funding, the only funding that will be needed will be for materials, which is already completed. So in terms of unskilled labor, there's tons of unskilled labor here in Radford. The citizens of Radford have really gelled together. They have great outpouring of support for this building and this community. So I understand your concern, but I don't think they're valid because
Okay.
I
Well,
know,
plumbing is pretty technical.
and
and so
plumbers have
that
stepped
might-
up and offered their
So
free
I'm
services.
just saying, I'm trying to not put us in a corner, saying that we will
Well, I
never,
don't
ever
want to
come
put it in a
back.
corner, but at the
I
same
don't
time,
want to, I don't want to put us in a corner, because I don't know what those phases are going to
I don't want a
offer.
picture painted to the community as though that the American Legion is going to return hat in hand to request more funding when that volunteer support has been offered and the materials have been secured been provided by Home Depot. That's my only concern, is the
No,
optics in terms of how it's being presented.
Let's come back to this in just a second. Do you have other thoughts
I
for
did
us?
have more questions, honestly, because I think what we're seeing here is diversity of opinion and all trying to accomplish the same goal. I think we all want to help, and so it's a matter of timing and ironing out the details. So allow me to try to figure out a few more of these details. Onassis, what does the process thus far look like in trying to obtain other quotes? Have there been other interested parties? What does that look like to this point?
So in terms of, great question, by the way. So if you're able to secure additional quotes, take my hat off to you, because I had a hard time being able to get contractors who are busy, who are understaffed, who are already on project as they are now, to come out and provide a bid and a quote for our building. So that's the issue that we were faced with. Crockett has been committed the entire time from 2018. Other contractors won't give us the time of day, won't return emails, won't return calls because they are busy completing projects as is. And so my frustration, I'm sure you can hear my voice, I'm a little frustrated because to ask for more quotes as a city council member, as you know, a person who's been in management for years, large budgets, I get it, fiscally responsible. I'm also a veteran, so I have to wear both hats, right? I have to wear a hat as a city councilman, fiscal responsibility. I wear a hat as an Air Force veteran, so I understand both perspectives. The situation we find ourselves in now is the ability to get a contractor to come to the location to bid out, to provide a quote for us. That's the issue.
And if I come back with hat in hand and I cannot provide that, then I will let council know that I couldn't get any other contractor
And with
to
that said,
give a
can we set a time limit on that?
Well, hold on, before we get to
Can I
that, let's
finish my
finish the
question?
questions.
I
and
do
then
have
we'll go
more,
back
and
to that.
I don't want to hold us here unnecessarily. I just want to make sure we're viewing everything all at once. So do we know how long the project will take, this project that he's presented to us?
I'm not certain, no, I do not.
Okay. When was it presented to us? Because it does have a statement at the bottom, this proposal may be withdrawn by the contractor if not accepted within 30 days. So,
And we've surpassed the 30 days. It was
We have
presented on July
surpassed the 30.
13th, 2021.
okay. Do you, well, I won't ask that because you're not a prophet, so.
No.
David Ridpath, I got a couple questions for you. What's your comfort level on this sort of price range, fitting this project into our budget at this time?
Of course, the project would be, we would pull the funds out of reserves. We have not budgeted for it. We've looked at a couple of other alternatives. We've talked to Onassis a little bit about, grants and things like that. Not aware of anything that won't take right much time to get and whether or not you can get them or not. I think the comments that have been made tonight are pretty much what's going on with the market. It's very tough to get contractors and materials and things like that, no matter what you're looking for. And this is the most important thing, whether this is phase one or whatever. If you don't fix the roof, you've got no other issues. And I think we've talked about this before. The city used to be involved. We had chamber, Main Street and tourism there, and we left, I don't remember if it was the restrooms got cold or got hot or wet. I can't remember which one of the
Probably all
four.
three.
Or
All
four.
three.
All the
It's
above.
of the above. It is a grand space. If you can figure out what kind of use it might be for the public, it does have some opportunities. Would just remind everybody, this is not our bids. You're looking at making a donation to the American Legion because we're not procuring this service. If we are, we'd either need to own the building or have some kind of contractual arrangement. I'm going around, so I'm gonna get back to your question, but just so everybody knows, and that, we would make a donation, whatever that amount is, from $46,000 back to match something else, or whether you're looking at something down the road, you were making a donation to the American Legion for whatever amount of money that is, and you could tie some strings to it. It has to be, the work has to be done 50% at 50% of the work, whatever those kinds of things, whatever Onassis and the Legion is comfortable with. You could work out those details, I think, pretty readily with no issues. Probably the price is pretty close. I mean, just knowing we have Glencoe across the street, the expense associated, and it's a slate. This is not a slate roof now, is it? Is it asbestos now?
It's asbestos. It is.
Asbestos roof. So it's a little more expensive a roof. The roofing can get, y'all been on council, you've seen, library roofs, things like that, we usually are $30,000 to $60,000, $70,000. So it's probably in the range, and I haven't gone down and looked at the roof specifically myself. I'm familiar with the building, familiar with the kind of construction that it is, and as long as all the stuff that probably a lot of what this is not so much the roof as it is the stuff that
It's
goes
asbestos
underneath
abatement.
it. Yeah.
So the
any
lion's
rotten
share of
wood.
this bid is asbestos abatement. That's it.
What other questions do you have for us?
I guess really the last bit is kind of a statement / question. I don't know. I'm torn on this too because I really do see both sides, and I do sense the urgency from both of y'all, and so I don't want to delay this beyond. And so to your point, Onassis, I think at a minimum we do need to set a date and say, and I think that if we don't decide tonight, it has to be by next council meeting. And I guess that's a question. Is it possible, because we talked about doing the appropriation at the next meeting, if we don't come to a final decision tonight, is it still possible to have that on the agenda and then for it to be removed if we do end up with another bid?
Sure, as long as we know about what the amount, if you're thinking about something like this, let's say you go with an appropriation of $45,000, roughly $46,000. If you go with appropriation set up for that and you get two prices in that are 35 or 30, you can amend it on the fly in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Anything
whatever.
else?
That's it.
Naomi, what else do you have?
So first of all, Forrest, I just wanted to thank you for recognizing that we have here a diversity of opinions regarding how we achieve the same goal. As we have this conversation, I do think it's important to recognize that every one of us in the room, so to speak, is supportive of the men and women who served our country, and that regardless of where we land on the appropriate way that we approach this building, it does not mean that we do or do not support veterans. I think that that's just important to keep in mind. One question that I did have, David, we had previously corresponded about CDBG funds, and you told me that CDBG funds would require a low and moderate income purpose and an agency that fulfills the same need. Could you elaborate on what that might be? Because it strikes me that if the American Legion is looking to potentially lease out the building, maybe there's a potential that we could flesh out working in cooperation with one of those agencies and try to put ourselves in a position where we might be eligible for CDBG funds. If you could talk about whether or not that is a possibility, I think that would be informative.
Sure, and I'm going to defer to Melissa. She's my CDBG expert and is here tonight. You may recall, well, let's see, I don't know, Mayor, whether you were on council at the time or not, but we had put CDBG funding towards Glencoe, and it was supposed to be used for that. Arnheim, excuse me. I've got Glencoe on my mind now. Yeah, Arnheim, and replaced the roof, and because it did not meet the CDBG test, we had to pay that amount of money back. Melissa, why don't you talk a little bit about the use and how a CDBG arrangement would have to function?
We would have to be able to identify on the front end what the end use of the building would be, and it has to be publicly a public service that's going to be for the whole community. So if you're restricting it to one organization that's not serving the LMI community, and I'm looking at Naomi, if anyone, I don't know if anyone else can see her. I can. So, if it's not designated to that, then we cannot be able to utilize the CDBG funding for that. Hence the reason Arnheim, we had to pay back.
like
So
a
realistically, we would need to have already identified a
museum or something like
partner
that.
and
Good.
be much further
Staff
along in
museum,
this
yeah.
process than we possibly could be even within the next 6 weeks.
Well,
And this funding, yeah, we would have to put that in our next action plan to be able to.
so
yes.
I have an idea. Naomi, do you have anything else? I've been holding my comments until everybody else had a chance to weigh in.
No, thank you.
This is, I know you're frustrated, we're all frustrated with this because this is something that we don't want to see this structure fail and not be successful. But this is precedent setting with our community. Now, we have had buildings like Glencoe and Arnheim, but typically there has been a process in place before those buildings were invested in, before we made those decisions. So, having said that, I recognize we're short on time, and I recognize that we've got to come up with some solutions. Couple of thoughts. We never typically invest without some level of memorandum of understanding of what that investment means and what that looks like. And I think that makes sense for working with the American Legion on this project if we were to go down that road. Now, what does that look like? I think it has to be a proposal for what are we trying to do here? A, we're trying to get the building to where it's safe and not being further damaged. B, obviously it's a home for the American Legion to meet, but that's typically monthly. I don't even think they meet weekly necessarily, but even if it was weekly, it'd be basically one night a week. I think we could potentially, if we chose to do this, designate other potential partnerships and maybe even reach out to some other people in the community. And all of these elements could be in the MOU. I don't want to say this is a loan, but the donation could be contingent
Stipulations, yeah.
upon the efforts of the MOU being done. This is the way we work with the chamber. This is the way we work with other organizations. Now, having said that, I do think it's prudent to at least attempt to see if other quotes are possible to make sure that if we choose to make this investment, that we've explored all options. If nothing else is possible, then we may be in one narrow category. I think the other piece is I support our veterans fully. This is not the only veterans organization we have in the community. I would really like to see a broader swath of the veteran community, including our friends with the VFW and other veterans, supporting this specific project, because not only is this important, but if we can only do this for one organization and can't do it for another organization, if we can only be supportive because of the historic nature of this structure, I think we have to be very upfront about that so that someone else doesn't say, hey, the boiler blew up at the VFW hall, you gave $45,000 to the American Legion, we need $45,000. And not that that would happen, but just that that's something we have to be aware of. I think we also need a timeline in terms of reaching out to Mr. Crockett to say, if at September 13th we were able to make this determination, we would like to attempt within this period of time what it's going to look like. What does the timeline look like for additional fundraising, additional labor support, raising beyond that? And then actually to maybe go on and say, okay, folks, we so love that you've said you want to give us your time, your energy, your talent. Let's get something in writing to say, John Smith says they would like to work on plumbing. David Horton says he's going to come in and sand floors. Let's try to quantify that a little bit, because the most important element of our side of this is our due diligence to say, what process did we go through before we made this decision? How do we justify this if we should have other people come to us to say, hey, we're in need, our church has this problem, our historic downtown building has this problem. This could go a lot of ways. Our veteran community is unique, and I recognize that, but I still think that before we move down a precedent-setting path for this, that those would be some of the elements that I would need to see to feel comfortable to say, we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's to make sure this was done. Jesse, I know you've said you're willing to help with, putting together the quotes, seeing what we could get there. I think if we could get a proposal, and this could even just be a brainstorming session with the American Legion to say, this is what we'd like to see happen, this is when we think we'll need it for meetings, these are other activities, that might provide us a pathway for other things, particularly if we put an MOU, if there are organizations, if there are groups that could utilize the space, that might help us identify something that could potentially qualify for CDBG. Now, having said that, we've dedicated our CDBG funds for now, but maybe that might help facilitate that, even though we're not 100% there yet at this time.
My battery's gone.
Yep.
So I apologize. Also recognize if it's specific to the group that is requesting the funding to utilize the space, that is limited by our subrecipients. So our subrecipients altogether only get 15% of our total allocation. So we have to be very careful of how that would be projected.
But it might be at least a few $1,000s that we wouldn't have to take out of reserves if we could identify that. So potentially it could say that council could designate organizations that could potentially be part of that, almost carving a slot for that to happen. For me to be 100% comfortable saying yes to this dollar amount, I would need to see some of those things just from where I'm sitting. Now, I get it. We've got 3 weeks to get there. September 13th is not that far away, but I think that's kind of where we need to be able to turn to our citizens and say, we're doing the right thing for everybody as best we can. There's no easy answer here. Saying no may mean the destruction of this facility. It would have been great if over the last 3 years we could have done GoFundMe and other campaigns and all of these pieces. That's not happened. So we're here, and this is the problem that's in front of us. Does that sound like a reasonable solution by September 13th for us to at least get framework in place that could be structured in an MOU, and we do MOUs all the time, so we can come up with that structure based on proposals, to look at some quoting, to talk a little bit more with the group about potential plans for the building, and to go back to Mr. Crockett and say, okay, if we said yes on September 13th, what does your window look like? Is this something that wouldn't happen until next spring anyway, and we'd have to find something else out? Is this something that could happen by the end of October? What are we looking at? Does that sound reasonable, council?
Well, I can commit to partner with Mr. Crockett. I think from an MOU perspective, I think it'd be more advantageous and more effective if the city sort of outlines what they are looking for. Jesse's been to our meetings. These gentlemen,
agree.
I love them to death, but they are
the best.
Yeah, they're the best. They're great veterans.
But they're
not
going
gonna
to
be able
need
come up with-
guidance. They're not going
Exactly.
to know the appropriate protocol on this.
Exactly.
And I will say, and we're talking about not wanting to strap our veterans, I think that, I don't want to create artificial barriers to
Exactly.
success of this, and I feel like we may be on the cusp of that.
Yeah.
So I think that you're right. I think maybe
If the city has
it behooves us to say, this is some of the things that we would like. And I agree. I know that that's one of the things that I was speaking about to the veterans is that, when we secure this building, we're securing it because it's been an asset to the city, and it needs to become an asset to the city, a city usable space again. They really did not have any qualms or issues with that when I spoke with them. We didn't go into parameters of that, so I think that is probably something that it's an important conversation that I do believe needs to happen. I just think that it probably needs to be guided by us, or this back and forth is going to be convoluted.
I think it has to be guided by us. I mean, even from the incubator perspective, back in 2018 when I mentioned that, the incubator role, is that'd be something where it's if we were to donate X amount of dollars, it comes with an MOU. In the MOU, it specifies we will reserve 2 rooms for an incubator program to be there for 12 months, each program, and continuing on for perpetuity, right? So they have no issues with that.
They really
The
don't,
building
no.
itself, there's a couple issues at play, right? The building itself is great bones, Jesse's real estate
It's an
terms, right?
amazing-
Great bones. But in terms of utilization, we meet one first Thursday of each month. So can the building be utilized more appropriately? Yes, that's a big yes. And so if the MOU spells out what we as the city would like to see the use being for that building, they would definitely acquiesce to that, because it gives them the opportunity to A, fix the building, get it back in good repair, and then also be an asset to the city, which it already has been. So we're not asking them to do anything out of the norm. They've already served as a voting precinct. They served as a temporary library. They served as the senior citizens.
They had a dance hall, they had dance
They served as a
classes.
home for the Chamber of Commerce. They served for the tour, as a home for the tourism. So we're not asking them to do anything outside the norm.
And I do see this being slightly different than the other buildings that do house our veterans for meetings. So, this building to me is twofold. One is, it is just that historical component that it truly has been so much to this community since it was built. So it's preserving a large piece of the history of our city. And then, it's a great spot because it also was a meeting place and still is, give or take, for our veterans. So I am compelled, not simply because it's a meeting place for the veterans, because if it was just any building that they were meeting in, it'd be a little bit different. But this is a building that has served this community for so long that I have an endearment to preserving this portion of our history, because it did serve so many of our needs. So, selfishly, yes, being veterans, we want to see all of our veterans housed well. This isn't just a pet project specifically just for veterans. It's also because it's that preservation of our city's history that I think is important. And what I know you and I even discussed is, at some point what would be ideal is if we had a little list and a wall. And they have some amazing photographs. Actually, they're getting wet. We were talking, I hope we were talking about getting those moved. But they have a lot of pictures that are historical that show how this building had been used. And so we even discussed having a wall just to show all of the history in the building. So I do know, I don't want to be on a slippery slope. And that's something you and I have talked about very honestly. And like I said, I feel like it's this building's role that it's had in our city that's every bit as important. If we don't do something quickly, then like I said, I would guess even by the end of my term, there may not be a conversation to be had. It is in, when I say dire need, it's in dire need.
Well, I would like to see the timeline, if we're going to do the quotes, at least from the organization, what they envision, so that we can help. We can structure an MOU. That's not a problem. I think there's going to need to be some level of city support, city participation in determination of that utilization for a significant period of time, because the roofing investment we're talking is a 20 to 40 year potential investment. So I think we need to look at that.
Can we all think about, and maybe reach back out to each other, maybe send some ideas on ideas that we would like maybe to see fostered within inside of this building too, and that gives us all a little bit of time, not a lot of time, but maybe you take the next few days to kind of think about what the city's needs
I think that's
might be.
fine. I would also like to see our other veterans organizations in the city express their support. I know they're not part of the American Legion, but since we are talking about veterans across the board, I would like to see that as part of this as well.
You do realize that most of these are dual memberships?
I do.
Okay, so
I do.
most of
I
the veterans that you're asking to show support are already showing support because they are VFW members and American Legion members.
I
So
just want to see
we're-
that based on a little bit of history,
Okay.
where sometimes when support is given to one group, other groups feel unsupported. And we don't want to see that go, because this is something I don't think that we could do in multiple places if we went down that path. Naomi, do you have any other thoughts?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let's revisit this at the September 13th meeting. I think we need some significant information before we're able to make this happen. Everybody wants to see it happen, but process is incredibly important at this point in time to get there, and I appreciate everybody's effort.
Can we just clarify on the action items so that we're not?
I was
think
going to
the
say,
action item-
Because
me
we've
too.
had this conversation before as a council, when we're asking for 3 quotes, we said we would lessen it to 1 quote because we cannot find contractors to come out and do quotes.
But it
So
was,
I understand the dollar amount was different, I
it was
understand that.
It was
It does
1/4.
not increase contract
But
availability.
here's the thing, what hurts if I try and if I come back and say, listen, guys, no one will do it?
And I'm
then
totally okay
that's-
with that.
then-
But
Right.
I would like to have some
That's-
components in place, from time-bound components in place to
I
say,
think we'll make a decision, my proposal is let's make a decision at the September 13th meeting, but we've got to develop an MOU, so we need more information. I think we've got to see in writing, what are people saying they're going to participate with? You know, if we're going to say we have all this coming in phase 2 or phase 3, let's get something concrete here, because that is part of this
so
decision-making
you're wanting to
process.
see by September 13th, a list of what people will sign up for phase 2 and 3, when we haven't determined paying for phase 1 yet.
Absolutely.
That's what you're asking for.
So-
Because
so-
that's one of the pieces that you're putting forward, that we already have all this support, and I've seen it on social media, but I think we've got to make it concrete. It's just like some of the fundraising piece saying, well, we've got all this support, we've got all that. We need to put down all the assets that we have to say, we have had folks say, I want to do this for the American Legion. I'm a plumber. I want to step up and help with plumbing. I'm a carpenter. I'm going to help with this. I'm an electrician. I'm going to work with the wiring. I think we need to see that. I can't speak for all of us. I can speak for myself that I'm having a hard time to get to this place, not because I don't support the veterans, but because of the process we're going through and the precedent we're setting. And when you and I talked about even potentially the city maybe even taking ownership of the structure, which is not something that the veterans would like to see happen, before we could go down any of these paths, we have to really know everything we're getting into. What are the assets? What are the liabilities? You know, you're in banking right now, and would you give somebody a $46,000 investment without knowing all those pieces?
I'm not in banking. I'm not a banker.
Okay,
I'm
well-
I'm a financial advisor.
Financial
So-
advisor, but would you advise someone to place their money with something if you don't know all the information? And I think that's the real key part. These are pieces of information that I think would help all of us make this decision to be able to say, we went through these steps to ensure that the investment of our taxpayers is going to be well received, not just by this organization, not just for the structure, but for what can happen for the community. And I do believe there's community support there. I think we need to document it. I think we need to talk about the timeline, like if September 13th we approve this, what does that timeline look like? What would the timeline for phase 2 and 3 be based on that timeline? You know, is this something that spring of 2022 we would be deep into phase 2 or phase 3? You know, what are all these pieces looking like? So that's what I need to see, and I'm just letting you know.
Can we get a consensus? I hear a lot of I need to see. Can we get a consensus in terms of what the council wants to see in terms of names and of people who are going to volunteer for
So
phase 2 and 3?
that's the one barrier I'm having in this too, that I
Yeah,
feel like is
'cause
going to
This
be
is like
busy
a
work for us.
A fake barrier. It seems like a-
Because what I will say is when we were looking at volunteers,
Yeah.
even for the first phase, I will tell you this, I had a
You had to
ton of
push people away,
volunteers.
yeah.
Now I'm also going to be very transparent. I can't say that I found a plumber, but I found people to do a lot of the work that would still be costly that people were willing to get on their hands and knees to do. I know we have needs now with the school. They look for volunteer projects. I had different church organizations reaching out. In fact, you know, when we were looking at the list, we were trying to figure out how we were going to organize the volunteers because there were so many.
So many, yes.
But what I don't want to do is we did that list before, and we're a year and a half, 2 years down the road. Getting a list of volunteers is not like a proposal, because if I say, hey, you know, Forrest, will you volunteer in maybe 2 to 3 years on this great project we're doing? I don't know what phase 2, when that is exactly going to be, because this is also very fluid.
Part of the reason to have the timeline.
But even with that, it's not our timeline. It's going to be, you know, their timeline, and they can give us a timeline, but I can tell you, you know, that even is fluid when you're talking about, and I know that because we're trying to build on at the lake. So I'm just saying, out of all of this, I really, really love the idea of, you know, getting some better grasp on how this can be used as a community. I just think trying to get lists now and getting people rallied to volunteer and then just say, but I'm not, I mean, it may be in a year, it may be 6 months, it may be.
It seems
and,
like
and I can give you names, but that doesn't mean in 2 years
Means
that
nothing.
RU students still going to be here that
Yep.
had volunteered. So to me, out of all of that, that is a lot of busy work that I don't think any of us have time to do, and that really will give us any more clarity than we have currently sitting
Thank you.
here. So that's the one part that I can say from doing the list of volunteers the first time and helping organize it, it really wasn't a matter of volunteers. At that point, it was a matter of having jobs available that were unskilled, because everyone, even, you know, the contractor that we had talked to that was working, looking at helping us on the inside, he's like, forget all that. Forget all of it. We can't even talk about it until the water starts seeping through the walls. So that is the only component that I'm a little nervous about, because I think it's busy work and it's not going to get us any further, and it's not going to really be
So here's
indicative.
why I don't think it's busy work. One of the comments that was made was, we don't know if in phase 2 we'll have to come back for 20,000. We don't know if in phase 3 we'll have to come back for 10,000, 50,000, what that'll look like. And the comment that was made was, we have all this. We have volunteers. We have people who have said they're going to come in and do this. We have people who are going to take care of that. I'm just saying, for me, if that's something I'm basing my decision on, to say, if we're going to make this proposal and accept this proposal, and these are things that are going to help us moving forward, what are those lists of assets? What do we have available?
It's 5 members on the council. 3 of us here think it's busy work, because it is. At the end of the day, putting a list, I can go on Facebook and write down every name. Jesse probably still has the names on a spreadsheet of every person who volunteered and what they can do. That is not going to move the needle forward in terms of repairing this building.
That
It's
sounds
not.
good. I think
But
the problem.
what's going here is you're saying that you want to see this. Can we please ask Jess? Jessie stated she doesn't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Can we please ask Forrest and please ask Naomi if they want to see it? I would like to hear that, because if we as a council, as a collective, are going to determine fiscally if we're going to donate this money to the American Legion, I would think we need to be in consensus in terms of what we would like to see. That's why I'm asking for a timeline. I'm asking for, if you want me to reach out to Crockett and determine what the phasing would be in terms of this project. If you want Jesse to reach out to other contractors, try to get a bid. Those are reasonable tasks that will move the needle forward in terms of repairing this building.
You think it's unreasonable to say
compiling a list.
that when this was brought up, you think it's unreasonable to say, oh, we won't need to ask for more money because we have all these things, but we don't have all that documented?
When contractors tell you that the primary phase is securing the roof, Jesse was privy to the conversations. Contractors will tell you all the other issues that can be completed, all the other tasks that can be completed in the American Legion building, unskilled labor can do that. Literally, unskilled labor can come in and do those things.
Now, and I do think, you know, and to speak to your concern, because I hear it, and I'm not saying that you don't have a valid concern. That's one that I told you, being transparent. The plumbing part, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, maybe you have volunteers that will do that. I'm not sure. I didn't have that on my list. But what I can say is, if we can at least save the building and remediate the rain damage, maybe after that, we go back to fundraising. Maybe we look at, you know, and again, I'm going to say, this is going to behoove the community. We probably will need a committee to help with this, because these particular veterans, you know, they're not necessarily going to be savvy in this. But if it's something that's important, it's something that we can continue to work on. This building needs a lot, and some of it after this is going to be skilled, but at least we know the building will be saved. And then we can look at other avenues as necessary to do these other pieces to make it usable. And, you know, like I said, I don't want it to be a Pandora's box for the city. I'm not saying I don't understand your concern. I just really think that getting a list of volunteers I just don't see that being very advantageous. And what I would be uncomfortable with is looking at you, Mayor, and saying, here's my list of volunteers, and I guarantee you they're all going to be here to do this
6 months,
work.
12 months from
I don't
now.
want to do that because I don't know
Well,
that.
I will say, one of the reasons we're at this point is 3 years ago, we thought a whole lot more was going to take place at that time. And that's why we initially had to say, okay, nothing's happened here. Let's do 5,000, time went by. Okay, it looks like it's going to be 20,000, time went by. I think part of the concern that I have, and I'm only speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for the whole council as we have this discussion. We would not consider a request like this with so many questions there without having all of those questions answered to an extent. Now, certainly, if the council doesn't need to see what the additional pieces look like, what the additional timelines, and when those folks would help work on that, I'm only one vote. So that's perfectly fine. Other than the fact that I feel like we're under this gun because there were things we could have done in 2018 and 2019 pre-pandemic that didn't happen, and here we are. Did you have a comment you needed to make?
I would just point out that what we're talking about is phase one, and phase one is what saves the building. And so I don't think there needs to be, I think there are better ways to mitigate the city's risk in that way, and saying, this is what we're helping with. This is what we're committing to help with is phase one. And you can even include that in the memorandum
You can
of
say no more
understanding,
additional
saying
funding.
this is a one-time donation. And so basically, don't come back asking for more. I think that's a more reasonable way of saying, of trying to ensure that we're not going to be on the hook for more down the road.
I'd say we don't tie the hands of the other councils, because we don't know what the economy will look like, or maybe that building will be salvaged and utilized in 50 different ways, and that maybe the city would want to contribute. I'm not willing.
I'm not saying that we
I'm not willing to
won't.
put
I'm
it in
just-
there that we won't. Like, I'm not
right.
tying the hands into the future, because we already have enough, just with COVID on our own, that we've had our hands tied. I'm just saying, I just want us to all agree to get through phase one, and let's save the building. There's lots of other conversations. There's a lot of other parts of this process, a lot of moving pieces. I think it's very important to get a conversation going, and this will probably be on the city side of things on how we would like to see this building utilized to its full potential.
And I totally agree with, I'm on board with the MOU. I think that was a great suggestion. I'm totally okay with that. I think that is a very prudent suggestion. It goes to the piece of being fiscally responsible as a city council.
And I
because
want to give it a shot to get proposals. And I may come back and I'll say, I'm sorry, this economy is awful, I have nothing. And I'm willing to come in with my hat in hand. If I get nothing else, or there are more, then that's on me. I'm just asking you to give me a couple more weeks to give it a shot. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
So I think it's fair to ask the American Legion, if we do this donation, let's spell it out in an MOU in terms of what the city would like to see the usage of that building being. I think that's fair. And so I fully support that.
So with this, if we choose not to put together a list of what's been proposed and pieces along that line, I would like to see at least what a proposed timeline would be beyond, let's say this takes 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, whatever that is, then what? Is it going to sit there with the repaired roof?
If we're going to, if American Legion is asking for funding for phase one, why would the city be concerned about phase 2 and 3 if the city says that we're going to provide funding for phase 1 to get the building and get repair? We'll do our due diligence as a city council to make sure that we're getting the proper quotes. We're going to set forth the MOU to state that this is how we would like to see the building used. In the MOU, you could put in a timeline and say within 18 months, within 12 months, we would like to see phase 2 started or completed. Most contracts, in my past history, that's how contracts read in terms of doing projects. You do a phasing that have contingencies built in that state if by the time when this project is completed, then you have a window for when the next phase should be completed. That is okay. That is reasonable when doing projects. I've done a lot of projects. That's reasonable.
I think you're just turning it around. You're saying we need to put that timeline in. What I was saying is, what's the proposed timeline from the folks who will actually be undertaking the fundraising piece, undertaking the coordination of labor and everything along that line?
What I'm stating is that you asked for a timeline. A piece of that timeline, you asked for a name of volunteers with that timeline. That is unreasonable. Reasonable is to say that the city has stipulations in terms of once we provide funding for this project, if Crockett says we receive funding on September 13th, we'll start the project October 1st. We anticipate it being a 4-month project, trying to get us through before January 1st hits for weather reasons. And then the MOU could state, if once the project is complete, because we don't know timing, someone that we could find something under, who knows, right? timing, once the project is complete and signed off per the Crockett and per the American Legion, once possession is taken or a contract signed, then the American Legion has to complete or start phase 2 within X amount of months, or complete phase 2 within X amount of months. That's reasonable.
Who will be the person responsible from the American Legion to ensure all of this takes place?
Who's ever the commander, I would imagine, whoever the commander is for the American Legion. I think that'd be the most, probably, commander and vice commander. That'd be the most fair.
Okay, Naomi, do you have any other thoughts?
Unfortunately, Onassis, you're the one that I'm having the most trouble hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'm doing as well as I can to follow along. You did ask earlier, what all of us wanted to see. And I certainly, I do agree. I would like to see at least an effort be made to reach out to other contractors and get those quotes. I also really like the idea of an MOU. It sounds like we are starting to be on the same page with that. And then my point bringing up phase 2 and phase 3 was not that it has to be decided on right now. It was that we should be clear about what our expectation is in the future. We are very likely going to see a need for an additional investment. And so I just want us to keep that in mind, because this initial investment is just one portion. And I recognize that there are many volunteers out there, but there are also a lot of needs for this building. And so I do think that it would be unrealistic for us not to expect to spend much more money than just this initial investment. So in terms of my action requests, I would like to see an MOU. I would like to see the additional quotes from other contractors, and I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we've exhausted this subject pretty clearly this evening. We'll see where we are on September the 13th. It will be our agenda item. We'll see what we can do. Next on the agenda for this evening, we do need to talk about our collective bargaining process. So at the last General Assembly session, they gave localities the ability to decide if they wanted to engage in collective bargaining with public employees, and as such, we are trying to determine how that would look for Radford. One of the questions that several of us had was, how do we even start this process? If someone comes to us from a public employee status and says, I'm trying to determine if we can bargain as a group, what do we go through? And that's kind of what we're looking at tonight. And Mike Bedsall has helped us draft a little something for us to talk through. Mike, can you walk us through this a little bit, give us a little background, and kind of help us understand exactly where we are with this request we've got tonight?
Okay. Employees always had the right to join unions and associate with employee associations. They've always had that right. However, public employers, can you hear me okay?
Better if you can hold the mic over a little closer to you, because
Yeah,
I don't think it's coming through as clear.
However, public employers did not have the authority to recognize an exclusive bargaining agent for purposes of collective bargaining with an employee unit or an employee group. An employee unit is really a group of employees that have a commonality of interest. And that commonality of interest arises by virtue of the fact that they perform similar job duties, they have similar conditions of work, they have similar skill and training, they receive similar pay and benefits. Collective bargaining is the process by which an employer and an employee engage in negotiation over the terms and conditions of employment with the intention of entering into what would be a binding collective bargaining agreement. And those terms and conditions of employment can include the most obvious things, such as pay and benefits, but also can include things such as other work conditions, safety equipment that they may need, or something else that's unique to their position. a new law came into effect on May 1, 2021, which is what the mayor has referred to. It's section 40.1-57.2, and essentially what this new law did is that it gave authority to public employers such as the city, local governments, to recognize an exclusive bargaining agent to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement on behalf of an employee group or unit. And under this new law, one of the ways that a locality can be required to consider whether or not to engage in collective bargaining is when an employee group provides you with a certification from a majority of its members that it is requesting that City Council consider enabling collective bargaining between the employee group and the city, okay? And if that happens under this new law, then the City Council is required to, within 120 days, consider whether or not to do this by taking a vote whether to approve collective bargaining or not. There's nothing in the new law that requires the city to approve collective bargaining. It just requires that you consider it and take a vote, yes or no, one way or the other. The city, when this new law was adopted, anticipated that it was going to receive requests from employee groups within the city for City Council to consider enabling collective bargaining. And due to that fact, the city thought it would be a good idea to develop some type of policy that would really have two purposes. One would be to provide guidance to employee groups that were interested in collective bargaining, provide guidance to them on how to make a request for the consideration of collective bargaining to City Council, and number two, what they would need to do to provide an appropriate certification that a majority of their members do in fact want collective bargaining. So that's really the purpose of the draft procedure that you have in front of you. It's basically there to provide guidance, to employee groups that are interested in collective bargaining on how to make a request and what needs to be done to provide a certification to City Council.
Thank you. Because that's the real tricky part, is how do we determine specifically who is eligible to participate as the collective bargaining unit. You have a list of several different statuses of employee, managerial employees, confidential employees, supervisors, temporary employees, interns or volunteers, probationary status employees, boards and commissions, and so forth along that line. So council members, have you all had a chance to review this document, and do you have any questions while we have Mike here as some advice?
Not a question, just a clarification. I spoke with Mike about this, and really I just kind of wanted to clarify for those who are watching. I did see one or two people who saw this on the agenda and were wondering what it was. And so just to clarify that what we're looking at tonight does not make any decision on the part of the city with regard to collective bargaining itself. It simply establishes a process to try to eliminate any miscommunication between any parties involved in the future.
It's a process for them to make the request to us.
Right.
Yes.
And I
Correctly
think,
stated?
That is correct.
and just for my information, so if they can join, but that our acceptance to bargain with them has no bearing on their ability to still be a part of that organization,
They
correct?
had that right before the new law.
Right, okay.
And there could be multiple organizations within employee units, and one presents, a group of employees present that are part of a particular unit versus another. That's what the certification process is for.
Because I did
But-
hear that they had, when they were presenting, they did mention a lot of the additional benefits that they would get in regards to counseling and coursework that they were interested in. So certainly I want to just make that clear that they still have the ability to have access to all of that, irregardless of what we end up deciding either way.
Well, and the other,
Anything you all do does not prevent them from,
right.
Correct.
The other
that
piece of this
association.
certification identifies within an employee group a bargaining unit, correct? That's the piece with this on what it would take to certify to make that request representing the employee group.
I think that's correct, that part of what your procedure is doing is that, one, it's providing them a form, so that they can provide a form of a form that provides basically in petition form what employees within that group are asking for this from city council. In addition to that, it does provide criteria for what constitutes an appropriate certification and who the city is going to actually consider in the group that represents the majority. For example, if you look at the definition of city employee, it specifically excludes certain types of employees, such as temporary employees, probationary employees, seasonal employees, that type of thing. And I think that the logic behind that, you can certainly change it however you wish from a policy standpoint, but I think that the logic behind that is that if you're going to have a majority of employees that is providing a certification to the governing body for collective bargaining, then you probably want your primary stakeholders to be making that decision, which are going to be your regular full-time employees. Not someone who's just temporarily there, someone who's been in the job for less than a year, such as a probationary employee. You want your real stakeholders in the positions making that decision. And of course, it would exclude employees that perform supervisory roles, because that's who the employee groups would be negotiating with.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because we've got a definition of what a supervisor is as a managerial employee there. Council members, does this definition, any individual who customarily and regularly devotes a majority of work time to supervision of 2 or more employees, has authority to hire, transfer, suspend, lay off, recall, promote, demote, discharge, assign, evaluate, reward, or discipline other employees, or adjust grievances, or effectively to recommend any such actions to a final decision maker. Is that a reasonable definition of supervisor?
I think it's pretty inclusive. It covers a lot. I mean, even if you miss does it have to be 2 or more? Is that like written in stone?
Well, that's what we've put here. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Would you want it if, again, part of this is some of the uniquenesses of the types of employees we have. We could have someone that oversees a unit for the activity of the organization, but they are not at the top of the organization, or a vice individual at the top of the organization. So I think we want to just be careful as we're making that determination. So for example, if there's someone who's a captain, a lieutenant, a sergeant, does that apply to all those individuals? And if so, does that limit significantly the number of employees who can participate in the collective bargaining piece? I'm just confirming.
And also, I think it's worth noting that, with these definitions here, these definitions we worked with Dawn Diamond to develop, and these are the definitions that are also in your personnel policy.
Right.
For these folks.
So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Naomi, you're not with us, so I don't want to leave you out of this conversation. What are your thoughts with what we've talked about so far?
I had the opportunity to talk with Mike about this earlier today, and he did walk me through a few points that I needed clarification on, and I did get that clarification. I think that this procedure does give us a good, fair process to let our employees know what the expectations are, should they seek to take advantage of this process. I think that it does also do a good job, as Mike described, of identifying the appropriate stakeholders, and making sure that the majority of those stakeholders are in fact interested in this process before they are defined as the group. So I think that this does a very good job.
Okay?
And to go back to what Jesse said earlier, that
Yeah.
does not keep one of the managers from being involved in joining, that they've got that full reign, whether they're temporary or whether they're managers being involved in an organization.
Are you all comfortable with the certification procedure? The filing, the determination of sufficiency, and the effect of insufficient certification?
Do we need to specify, it says necessary tools to certify, do you need to specify like which tools, like employee roster or anything like that? Does it need that level of specificity, or what do you think?
I thought it was better to leave that more flexible,
okay.
you know, so that if David or his designee, you know, needed to say verify the individuals who had signed the petition requesting certification, he would have the ability to request whatever documentation that he needed.
leaves
I
more-
think you've
yeah.
identified what I would expect it to be.
Okay.
But it would give some flexibility there.
Well, and I think we made enough definitions through the types of employees that we have to give structure to that. It's just with each individual unit, it could be slightly different, and there'll have to be determination of contract or what have you in terms of their employment. And then having this document, which is a petition, so that we have this as a device to help record the information and then provide that to us so that we can then determine if they've met the certification. That helps. Any other thoughts regarding certification? So just to explain why we're going through this in such a meticulous manner, we have not done anything like this before as a locality. And to determine our process for accepting a request, to then determine if we want to have a process for considering collective bargaining beyond that is an important step here. So, council members, is there further discussion on this resolution as it is presented to us? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adopt the resolution to approve procedure for the City of Radford for certification of support and consideration of a collective bargaining request?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Skelton, would you call for a roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay. So thank you all for that. And before we go, we do need to have a closed session in just a few minutes, but I want to have a chance to have a little more conversation before we do that. David, what do you have for us this evening?
Just a couple of things with the hour. I'll be brief. Welcome back to our Radford University students. Welcome back to our students in Radford City School Systems. Great to see people back in the community again. So we're excited about that as they start working with us. We have missed them, their volunteerism, their involvement in our community, and those kind of things. So we're excited and welcome them back and hope they have a great year. The sidewalk project on West Main is complete. We got a little bit left to shape up, but that turned out to be a great project. We're looking at other projects that we can start getting into later this fall, and we'll come back and let you know as those get formalized in the next few weeks. Lots of building activity nearly everywhere you go. There's something going on, great for our community, reflective of how people are getting back into things, back into the economy, and investing from the private sector and you all from the public sector in our community. So exciting about that part of it. Great earlier transit, Radford Transit 10-year anniversary. Great asset to our community. Thanks to all for their involvement there. I did ask Kim if she would just briefly, I'm sorry the time's gotten late, had a great concert on Saturday night. She's going to tell you a little bit about how well that went. That kind of gives you an idea of where things are going and give you an idea of what Glencoe can look like if it was chosen to advance, whether it's an informal or formal amphitheater location, and the number of people that were there. Tell you a little bit about some upcoming tourism activities, and then the Renew the New, which is on Saturday. Kim, roll with it, and that's it for me.
Thank you, David.
So an exciting event on Saturday with the concert on Fields with Glencoe. Very exciting. We had 3 food trucks there. Chef Lauren Hunter's food truck, as well as 800 Degree Wood Fire Pizza, and Nana's Sweets was negative comments at all. So people were very excited about it and fantastic. Coming up this coming Saturday, it's Renew the New. That starts around, registration is around 8 o'clock a.m. We will have a welcome and a safety portion of that beginning at 8:30 with Mayor Horton being there as well. We're looking at 9 o'clock, having those people disperse to either land or water. We do have boats. RU is furnishing boats again for that water. We are asking if anyone has a boat and they want to volunteer to please, we encourage them to bring those. Lauren Hunter from Brad Adventures has been very gracious and has offered kayaks to us as well. So we're looking at very exciting success. That meeting is at Shelter 3 at Bissett Park. We will begin there, and there's also 3 takeout points. We're looking at Dudley's Landing, Community Garden, and it will go down to the Dedman Center. We will bus those individuals down to those takeout points and then bus them back to Shelter 3. There will be t-shirts available for volunteers, and lunch will be provided at noon for those people as well. So we're looking for a great turnout. That information's out on Facebook, out on the website as well. So we're excited.
Thank you. Thank you very much. David, you're done? You're good? Naomi, what do you have for us this evening?
I will be brief. I wanted to congratulate Kim on a wonderful concert, and if she'll allow me to brag, she put that together in the space of about a month. So just an extraordinary event in a very quick period of time. And then I also wanted to congratulate Sheriff Armentrout on an extraordinary kids camp. It was truly stellar. Over 100 kids came out for a 2-day event. And people all across the city were able to volunteer. We had parent volunteers. People from the city helped out. Radford Police Department was there. The fire department was there. Public Works was involved. Recreation Department was involved. Unfortunately, we even had to have the sewer department come out to fix a restroom at the very last minute, and they did so within 15 minutes. So it was just a tremendous cooperative effort, and it made a world of difference to these kids who all had just the most amazing time. So thank you to the sheriff, and congratulations on a wonderful event.
Thank you, Naomi. Jesse, what do you have?
I dedicated my moment of silence this evening to John Hall Jr. And also I just wanted to piggyback the wonderful remarks. The concert was so much fun, and you're right, it was nice to see people in all age groups really enjoying themselves, and what a talented group that they were. So what I kept hearing was, you know, is this a precursor to see if we could do an amphitheater? Is this a test? I was telling people it's not a test, but certainly, you know, we want to see if we build it, will they come? And, you know, it was a pretty simple infrastructure that we provided, but it was absolutely full. And so I think if there was a litmus test, that it certainly, we had a wonderful result. And I know that was a lot of work. And I think I saw you whispering, I think it was under a month that you pulled that together, wasn't it? I mean, yeah, I was thinking it was about 2 weeks. And that was a lot of work, but the other thing that I heard was, I hope that we can eventually make it a series. So I said, I think we're all hoping that. I know our local businesses, a couple of them said that they did very well that evening with people coming in. So it brought business in, and I saw a lot of people from other surrounding communities. I was I think a little surprised at the amount of people that we drew from like I said, the New River Valley as a whole. So great work to everyone.
Thank you very much. Forrest, what do you have?
Nothing for me tonight.
Onassis, you have anything?
Nothing for me.
Well, I want to say kudos to Kim. That was an amazing show, and I've heard all the same comments, more. People are hungry for this. Now, we do have some things in the fall. Do you want to talk briefly about some of the things we have planned? September 18th is our next big show.
Yes, so September 18th is another concert at Glencoe Field. October 2nd is Family Weekend at RU. October 19th is Craft and Draft. October 9th, is the Highlander Festival. October 16th is Craft and Draft. And then October 30th is an International Food Festival that we will be having downtown.
And people can find that on the website.
Got my attention.
So
Okay.
So just to piggyback on what Kim's saying, and just a quick thing, October 2nd is actually Homecoming at Radford. Parents Weekend, Family Weekend, I believe is September 17th. It's a couple weeks before. So it's the weekend of our beach festival. So that should be good. Or I think that's the 18th, right? September 18th is the beach music? Concert. We'll just leave it at concert. But I just want to say how much we appreciate you taking on the tourism piece in addition to the economic development. Obviously, both are very closely tied, but we certainly appreciate the wonderful effort that you're making with that, and all of the tourism group, the chamber, all of the volunteers who came out to help make that possible, Parks and Rec, Public Works, everybody who helped support it, all the city staff and everybody who made that happen. Those are the kinds of things that I think can really drive a lot of what can happen for the city of Bradford. Businesses can do very well, and we can move in a really positive direction. This weekend is going to be a busy weekend in Bissett Park especially. We do have Renew the New, and Kim went through some of those details. We also have the literacy volunteers, Tri-Wizard Tri-Mile Tournament. I hope everybody can come down and participate in that. And here's the thing, you can do a twofer. Take a bag of trash. You might not win a medal for your time, but while you're walking your tri-mile, you can pick up trash, which is what I did a couple years ago. That's what I plan to do this year. Please support these efforts. You know, we talk about our riverfront being so crucial. Keeping it clean is essential, and working on this project is essential. This is a great community effort to do that. The Literacy Volunteers piece draws hundreds and hundreds of people from across the region to Radford for that program. It's a fun race. It's also a great activity for literacy volunteers, and improving adult literacy is a wonderful goal for us as well. I want to talk just briefly before we go to closed session about the meeting tonight. One of the things that I think is so important with everything that we do is that we have detailed conversation so that every decision that we make as a council is intentional. And I'm very appreciative of everyone for engaging in conversation on these things, even when it can be frustrating, because it's always too late to do that after we've made the decision. We can invest the time ahead of time to have those conversations and to get everybody's point of view before we make a decision. We do need to move into closed session. I will entertain a motion to move to closed session for discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3, as well as consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. For the purposes of this subdivision, probable litigation means litigation that has been specifically threatened or on which the public body or its legal counsel has a reasonable basis to believe will be commenced or by or against a known party. Nothing in this subdivision shall be construed to permit the closure of a meeting merely because an attorney representing the public body is in attendance or consulted on in a matter. Specifically this evening, for council to receive consultation regarding the opioid lawsuit as well as the 6th Street right-of-way litigation. Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to move into closed session. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? As such, we will go into closed session.
And if we just meet in here.
That's the plan. We will meet in here.
Can we have a brief?
Yeah, we can do a biology break real quickly. Are we offline now?
Thank you, Jessica.